Welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is geared to take approximately 45 minutes as we know that your time is valuable. Once we have completed, we will open it up to a short Q&A section, so please hold your questions until then, or you can simply type them in on the right side of your screen and we will address them after the presentation. If you look to the right side of your screen, you'll see the GoToMeeting control panel. About 3/4 of the way down, there's a little box marked chat. So as you think of your questions, simply type them on in and we'll get to them after the presentation. Our co-presenters for today's webinar are Mark Stillman and John Vrabel. Mark Stillman is a co-founder of Energy Engine as well as president of Energy Edge Advisory Group, a consulting firm that provides services of technology vendors and dealers. Mark is a student of the energy industry who continually studies the changing dynamics of this exciting marketplace. Mark has a broad professional background with specialties in strategic planning, process optimization, and fuel hedging. John Vrabel is the president and co-founder of Energy Engine. As a career-long business development expert, John understands the necessity of focusing on the consumer to achieve sustainable business success. That discipline, along with his experience running energy businesses, has driven the design and ongoing development of the Energy Engine. As an early internet pioneer, first with electric and natural gas utilities and then downstream fuels, John continues to push the technology to keep pace with today's consumers. Consequently, the work of the Energy Engine partners has resulted in more online fuel sales than anyone by far. Through these webinars, we all hope to shed a fresh perspective on the emerging challenges facing our industry, stimulate a meaningful dialogue, and sometimes even challenge the conventional thinking of attendees. Mark, on over to you.
Adrian, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and we appreciate you joining us today on this, well, at least in New England anyway, a gorgeous August Friday morning. It's interesting, we always get concerned that people have better things to do in the summer than talk about their fuel business, but clearly most dealers don't get the summer off anymore. I had a bunch of conversations with dealers yesterday and everybody seems to be in the mode of prepping for the season, and it won't be long, we hope. There's a really nice audience on the phone today. We appreciate that very much. We speak a lot, meaning John and I, and we do a lot of article writing and all kinds of things and try to be as good participant in the community of energy dealers as we can. And we get big audiences for these will call sessions, not because we're the most charming people or the world's best speakers necessarily, but I think it's more reflective of a topic that the industry is really interested in. It's not a new topic. Will call is in COD is far from a new issue for all of us in the industry, but it is becoming new again because it's changing very much, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, the changing dynamics. We have a neat group on the phone today. There are some propane companies on the phone, clearly online fuel sales to heating oil customers and propane customers have nuanced differences, mostly related to tank ownership and safety. So because there are some folks on the phone who are either in pure propane or hybrid propane, we have customers in all markets, heating oil only, both, and propane only. I will try to draw out some distinctions, as will John. So again, the first slide here is a little bit provocative, right? So learning to serve will call customers is somehow essential to the future success of the industry and for dealers. It's really kind of interesting, right? Because this was a part of the market that's always been a challenge, maybe in some corners really disliked, and a low value customer, if you will. But with the rosters growing, the changing dynamics of this customer growing, dealers are really forced to sort of revisit what this means, who this customer is. There's a lot of them, and they're behaving very differently than before. And if you don't learn to serve this market and the trends continue, then you could have some challenges in the future that we'd like you to avoid. That's kind of our mission today. So my job is to do a little setup work. It's not going to take long, maybe 15, 20 minutes, talking about the industry and the dynamics and this customer, and then get right to John's section. John is the CEO of Energy Engine and the keeper of massive amounts of data for e-commerce. And the question that we get most often from prospects and even customers who have been in it for a year or so, are what are dealers doing? People who have embraced this, especially the early adopters, where are they today? What is happening when they put the energy engine in or e-commerce fuel sales into their business and really go after it? What happens? How do I understand the potential impact to my business, both from a strategic sense, a brand sense, and a profit sense? So that's the real meat of today. I'll do a little setup work. We'll do our best, Abbott and Costello, today, and try to get you done within 45, 50 minutes. So my job is to try to give a little insight today in how we're going to reduce the disruption and hassles of this customer, because they are disruptive, and they do create havoc, especially a couple of years ago when winter decided to show up for real. Will call was a real problem for dealers. So we'll talk through about how we automate that. Automating will take away a lot of those hassles and disruptions. Talk about price shoppers. There's more and more of them. We are in the commodity business, and those are the types of businesses being most pressured by consumers because we're all essentially selling the same thing with a value-add wrapper. But price shoppers can hurt margins, and there are ways to mitigate that risk using e-commerce. We'll talk about that, and again, John's data on performance. So why are we talking about will call, right? It's been around forever. Generations have dealt with the will call. And in fact, if you go back far enough, there was only will call, right? That's all there was. Automatic is a fairly recent creation based upon degree days, probably really taking hold in the 70s. And once automatic came, will call became the sort of red-haired stepchild, right? Because most people have a negative sort of view or evokes negative images in their mind when they think about will call. I recently spoke at a conference and I asked people if they hated will call, and they almost all raised their hands, and I asked them if they had a decent sized will call business, and the same group raised their hands. So you're in it, you've been in it, you'll probably get it more in the future. We'll talk about that a little bit. But I understand and I respect that this is not a customer profile that everybody necessarily loves. So what is new about it? Well, I think the digital transformation, I used to call it the digital revolution, but the revolution is over. The revolution is won. Technology, consumer technology, the digital age is here. It's transforming everything we do. It's transforming the lives of our children, our parents, everybody. And this really has created a new fuel customer. And by that, I mean, they're behaving and acting and engaging with you in ways that make it hard to recognize them based upon our historical fuel customers. It's important to know that we're not the only industry struggling to figure out who these customers are or consumers are. It's easy to blame millennials. Well, the millennials are the ones that are problems, but it's everybody. I'm not a millennial, I'm older than millennials. And their behavior, yes, is shaping our behavior, sort of the tail wagging the dog. But it's not just millennials, it's everyone. Even seniors, 85% of senior citizens are on the internet every single day. It's a myth that your old customers don't want to use the web. They do. They want to learn, they want to get more knowledgeable, they want to understand the choices they have in their lives, and it's at their fingertips. We call it the customer you don't know, because again, their habits are unique, but they're unique because they're not being shaped by the competitors down the road like they used to be. They're being shaped by Amazon, they're being shaped by Uber, they're being shaped by LL Bean, they're being shaped by Nordstrom, anybody they're doing business with online, Ally Bank, Esurance. So they're taking all these habits they're learning in every part of their life in this digital world, everything on their smartphone, and they're bringing it to the fuel dealer business. And what they're finding is a little incongruity with the digital age and the way that the fuel industry tends to do business. Now, I'm not making a broad stroke. There's a lot of dealers out there who are doing an enormously good job with digital engagement. But by and large, the industry has been slow to the trigger on the digital engagement. I think an important thing about the increase in will call and COD, because we all know that there is an increase in will call and COD. It's just a fact. A lot of it is simply because consumers are in a mode, and I don't want to draw a line like we're not all consumers. We, as consumers, really now expect low prices. The minute I go online, I do not expect to buy something at full price. It's an absurd sort of logic to think that that's happening. I want a low price, but as a consumer, I'll do it myself. I'll do all the work. I'm asking you to provide me with a high quality product or service at a discount, but I'm okay doing the work myself. But that's a win for everybody, right? And that kind of falls into the will call mode. The will call is sort of custom built for a discount price, but it's not custom built to push those people through telephones and typical business models that dealers have. It's better to do it in a way that can enable them to do it alone and save you money in the process. So before I go any further, I just want to say this. This might be gratuitous, this might be editorial commentary, but this is the consultant in me. We are not an industry that is inoculated from the internet. I know that this is something that people don't like to hear. Someone I respect very much recently at a presentation in an industry event says, until Amazon can sell mail fuel through UPS, I'm not going to worry about the internet. That's an incredibly risky mindset. The internet is here. Consumers are consumers. We aren't inoculated from those forces. They don't want to be told what to do. They're very, very self-determined. They'll create their own category. They're loyal for sure to brands, but they're very intolerant of companies that are not modernized in how they want to do business. The whole web-based commerce thing has changed every industry, but it's changing ours. We're slow to the change. Part of that is because consumers really didn't have the tools, dealers didn't provide the tools for web-based commerce. And consumers tolerated it for a little while, probably about 5 years, and now they're becoming increasingly frustrated with a lack of online engagement and the ability to do business with you without talking to you, without using the mail. So all the things that we kind of have hung our hat on over the years. And then, again, I've seen a presentation in the last couple of years at an industry event that made me squeamish when somebody was like talking about that we are the last milkmen, that we are the last real intimate sort of business in people's homes, that nobody will ever want to give that up. I don't know the last time I got milk delivered to my house, but it wasn't recently, and I would challenge all of you to think about whether you want to be the last milkman or not. I don't think we do. The intimacy is an anachronism. It doesn't exist anymore. Consumers don't see it. Consumers really don't care about it. They want low friction. They have no time. And they want to do business with you in a way that is as easy as humanly possible. So I'm big on labels, right? So it used to be, and this slide used to be kind of a funny slide about starting a fight in an industry event, full service versus will call. But really what we're talking about here is self-service. Will call is simply self-service. It's a label thing. Will call, it provokes negative images. Self-service provokes positive images. If you think back to the 90s, mail order kind of was a down market thing that, oh God, you bought a mail order. But suddenly now we're all using Amazon and we're geniuses. So labels are important. So kind of think about will call as self-service for a minute and take that mindset into what is changing about this customer. We have, because of the advisory business and certainly because of the energy engine, which has dozens and dozens of dealers doing hundreds of thousands of deliveries every year, we see the demand. We understand the research that's being done, looking at what Nora is doing and what they're finding out about customers. There's just too many will call customers now to ignore them. If you go back to 2000, it's tough to get exact numbers and regions vary, so please bear with me here. It was about 80% automatic and 20% will call. If you fast forward to today, it's more likely to be 50-50. In some markets, it's lower, but in some markets outside Boston, parts of Connecticut, parts of eastern Pennsylvania, will call is upwards of 60%. That is not us making those numbers up. We actually gut check those with dealers. And I had a dealer in Boston recently tell me when I said 50-50, he said, Mark, I think, and this is a large dealer, who would know? I think you're low. In our market, I think it's 60%. Either way, whether it's 40 or whether it's 60, there's just too many. In any business, you can't ignore half your market. I hear a lot of dealers today say, we only want full service customers. Okay, that's fine. But in this industry that's seen demand erode by 50% in 15 years. Picking and choosing your customers could be a futile and folly effort. This low-end relationship concept, for those of you who are 30-somethings or even early 40-somethings and 20-somethings, you have made low-end relationships cool. You want to do online courses in college. You want to buy your car online. You want to rent your car online, not from enterprise, from somebody who happens to have a car that you like. Everything is done on the phone. Everything is done with credit cards. Almost everything is done outside of normal business hours. You'd be shocked at how much commerce occurs at 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. Lots of insomniacs, I think. But this notion that it's okay to have a low-end relationship, right? So that sort of plays into the will call thing. I want fuel. I don't really care about the rest of it. I just want oil or I want propane. And I'm okay if it's not all frilly and I don't have a whole bunch of stuff and I have to look at my own tank gauge. I'm fine with it. I do that in my other parts of my life. Demographically, this is really probably the biggest change of all. So if I asked you all to close your eyes and think of a will call or COD customer, you're going to think of some craphead with a 420 FICO score, right? And they want 50 gallons and they're out and they have a really angry dog at the gate. And then they're not even there when you get there and you're chasing them around. Yes, there are still some of those out there, but there's more and more mainstream fuel customers. That's an important distinction. The people who are will call customers now, a lot of them are automatic profile. An example that I use a lot is I live in the mountains of central New Hampshire. It's pretty cold here. I have propane and heating oil. And even though I work for an e-commerce company, I am a dyed-in-the-wool full-service customer. I deal with a very prominent and secure, locally owned company. They've been here for a long time. If I named a name, you all would have heard of them more than likely. And I buy everything that they're selling. I travel a lot. I have a young daughter, and I like my house to be secure. My neighbors are retired pediatricians on one side, and on the other side, a custom home builder. Neither of them have any kind of economic challenges, and they're both internet fuel buyers for propane and heating oil. And they chuckle at me for the whole full service automatic thing, and they kind of, well, just buy it online. It's just easier to do. And I'm like, I just don't live that way. But they're more the profile of this will call market. It's emerging as a mainstream fuel customer. Good news, and this is surprising often, is that despite the fact that there's more will call customers, that e-commerce, internet shopping, yada, yada, is leading to increases in the number of will call customers, they're loyal, right? So if you do research on web commerce, you'll find that although people like to use the internet, they love convenience and self-determination, they'll still be loyal to a brand. If they have a great experience online, if the tool is good, if the communication is good, if the fulfillment is good, they'll be loyal. They're not going to necessarily shop around for the cheapest price all the time. Will call customers used to be like that, right? They'd go from one rusty trucker to the next for the cheapest price. But you're finding more and more will call customers wanting to do business with a more secure, stable, known brand, and they'll be loyal. And John will run into those loyalty numbers in a minute. But our research shows very large body of deliveries and dealers that the loyalty rates on will call and COD online are equal or very close to being equal to full service loyalty rates. So a lot of good news, a lot of changing news. Will call and COD is changing. It's a part of the market that we can't ignore anymore. Our job as a technology vendor and other technology vendors is how do we get you the right tools to serve them as efficiently as possible, because they are still massively disruptive. They still give us headaches, and they still can crunch your margin, obviously. So our position is to reposition your business. E-commerce is the way to serve will call and COD customers. We are not asking full service dealers to abandon their full service business. We are simply telling you that if there's 30 to 40 or 50% of your market out there that you're not touching because you don't want will call customers or you want to limit the will call customers, we're saying that don't do that. reposition your business to go after that, but use a tool that drives efficiency and cost cutting, and most importantly, delivers the experience that consumers are demanding online. Shopping carts are not going to do it. Consumers are increasingly frustrated and annoyed by shopping carts. I'm going to tell you why in a second. Portals are great. We have lots of customers who have portals for their full service business and our system for e-commerce and will call. Portals for will call and e-commerce are not a good tool. And we'll talk about that in a second too. Again, we love the portal vendors, Dustwin and MPX and everybody else, but there's lots of confusion about what they do and what we do. So first of all, it's a mindset shift. E-commerce sort of forces you into the discount market. Nobody goes online to buy something expecting to pay full price. But it's okay. We need to get out of this mindset that somehow it's junk business. That's like saying that Mercedes has a $200,000 car and a $24,000 car, and the $24,000 car is junk. It's not junk. It's just a discount product for someone who wants the brand but does not have the money to spend for the premium product. Nordstrom has an online site. You can buy discounts. They have rack stores. They have rack online sites. And then they have the premium site. You can go in there and buy your clothes and listen to the grand piano and have a cappuccino and pay more money. That's great. That's what you want to do. We're the same way. If people want full service, then that's great. If they want budgets and price plans and automatic, that is great. But what if they don't? It doesn't mean they're not worth anything. It means they just want to buy from you differently. And every industry has that. I would challenge you to think of an industry that looks down upon discount shoppers, that doesn't have some entry point offering for consumers who don't want the full enchilada. So this self-service customer is out there. There's more and more of them. If you have a portal for full service, that's great, because that's another area where you can do self-service. But for this transient business, and we'll call them COD, you probably don't have a good tool for that. And it's okay to want to fulfill a need for transient customers, right? These are, again, not junk customers, more of a mindset shift. We want you to grow. We want you to do it in an innovative way. The old ways of growing fuel businesses are expensive and massively resource crunching, right? So you have people driving around in cars, the sort of traditional things, you have salespeople, you're trying to get leads, you have realtor relationships. That's just not how business is done anymore. It's just too expensive and too tedious. And this new customer, you'd like to attract them. In order to attract a new customer, meaning customers who expect to be engaged online, you have to have really good online tools. Taking a bill payment online is far from online engagement. You need real automation, right? And you need really good consumer technology, or else consumers will say, "This, what planet are you from? If I can do my taxes and take a college course online, why is it so hard to order my oil?" So automation is important in reducing fulfillment costs. So all of that is sort of bundled into e-commerce. And our goal, like any e-commerce vendor, and this has been a challenge for dealers for years, we've been looking for a way to be fully automated from awareness and order to cash. But somewhere along that chain, there's been a manual process. And to this day, even with shopping carts and even with portals and some engagement tools, it simply triggers a manual process. So e-commerce is a way for you to do the entire work of a fuel dealer, including relationship building and communication, in an automated, touchless way, unattended by you. All of it's happening without your effort. So that means putting the right tools into one e-commerce system. So what are those tools? Well, those tools obviously are ways to drive traffic and SEO, and that's the marketing firm's responsibility. For us, it's more about, what does the consumer expect? Well, they expect a really easy, intuitive e-commerce site. I want to be able to get information, get prices, and order in as quick a time as possible. I'd like it to be fun and interesting, and I'd like it to emulate what I'm doing elsewhere. More importantly, I want you to communicate with me. If I visit your site and I don't order, send me a note, thank me. If I get a price quote and don't buy anything, send me an incentive. Send me a nickel off if I order within the next 3 hours or the next 24 hours. Thank me for my business. Thank me for getting a newsletter. Tell me when my delivery is coming. Tell me when the payment has been confirmed. Everything I need to know. Think about buying on Amazon, right? They are the pinnacle of e-commerce. You are constantly being communicated with, confirming behavior, confirming orders, confirming payment, confirming back orders, sales, incentives, prompts. They know so much about you. An e-commerce system like the engine is the same way. It's able to do all of those things in one place. We want to drive down cost. Obviously, if we're not going to get on the phone and we're not going to use mail and we're not going to give terms and we're not going to wait for people to give you money, then we're going to drive down costs. And including the way that you handle payments in an e-commerce system is a very inexpensive way to handle payments. So there are costs being driven down across the entire sort of value chain from order to cash. We see a lot of our customers who get in the e-commerce business who say, hey, you know what? We have this bunch of will call customers. This happened with a dealer of ours in New York recently. Let's push all of our existing will call customers to the online site, give them a 5-cent off for their first delivery to move online and get them off the telephones. That is an opportunity for you as well as you look at cost cutting and preserving resources, is moving your will call business online in your e-commerce business. Acquisition costs in gallons. Getting new gallons is hard in this industry. This is an area I spend a lot of time on. If you look at research, whether it's Greger and Gray or other analytics people in the industry, for a full service customer with sales, marketing, incentives, you name it, it's somewhere between $500 and $700 to get a new full service customer. That's a really expensive gain. And most dealers obviously are thrilled if they can net zero. Gains and losses equal zero at the end of the year. But boy, that's a real expensive way to preserve your market share. Ironically, if any of you are in the acquisition game, a lot of deals are happening on market share now around $600 or $700 per customer. So think about that for a second. Think about an 800 or 900 gallon average user in the Northeast for heating oil at $500 or $700. Nora's saying that half of those customers will leave you now within 18 months. Not only is it expensive, it's also extremely risky because you may never make that money back. So on the online world in e-commerce, you have customers being acquired for somewhere around $65 to $80. So it's a very small fraction of the cost of a full service. And depending on your margin, you could easily pay the ROI of that customer for one delivery might be there. And that's sort of part of our magic is delivery by delivery ROI because of the acquisition cost. Cross-selling, this is a myth, right? If I open up an e-commerce business, Mark, and all my full-service customers will run over there and yell at me for having low prices. That might have been the case 10 years, 20 years ago. Consumers aren't that way anymore. First of all, if your customers are that vulnerable, they could go anywhere today and save. There's probably 20 COD companies in any given market where they can go, and they're not because they appreciate what you do for them. And they're savvy enough to know in this day and age that fuel only online, yeah, it's cheaper than what I'm getting, certainly what I'm buying myself here in New Hampshire. I would say, okay, I get it. I get why my neighbors are paying 30 cents a gallon less, but I want all this other stuff. We actually see growth of the full service business of 3 or 4% on an annual basis, not the other way around, because our customers will cross-sell their full service business on their e-commerce site and try to convert people into their full service business. So we're talking about discount. Yes, we are saying that as an industry, will call and COD demand price discount. We know that. Yes, there are some will call customers out there that you have who pay full price. I call them automatic will call. Typically, they're the guy that wants to draw a magic marker line on this gauge and call you. But basically an automatic customer. But true will call and COD are discount oriented. They always have been, and they're more so now. Discount prices are fine. What's not fine, in the reason that will call has been a challenge for dealers for such a long time, is the full service sort of business model of being very tactile, of being on the phone a lot, of using a lot of mail, a lot of internal communication. It's expensive. And if you're doing that for a discount customer, that margin erodes very, very quickly. A couple of examples here. A will call order by phone is the second most expensive phone call your CSRs take. It's about $6 to $10 to fulfill a will call order. It's 1, 2, maybe 3 phone calls, right? It might be running down to the dispatcher, finding a driver if the person is, if you're in some dealers still are in that drop everything mode. Makes me a little bit nervous when that happens, but some are. And even if not, you got to fit it into your route. It's about a $6 to $10 fulfillment. For just for giggles, the most expensive phone call in the industry is our budgets and price plan. Those calls are more expensive because they take more time. If this driver has to wait for money, God forbid he's handling cash, it costs even more, right? If a customer helps themselves, then really all you have to do is deliver. I think this is really something about price discounts that is important, these last 2 pieces here. The customer is going to self-serve. You're going to get all that order automated. If you're integrated to your back office system, then all you're doing is delivering fuel. From the minute that customer heard about your company to the second that your driver shows up, you have not engaged them at all other than the internet. That's really powerful stuff. Payments are being made online in a secure way. Payments are being made before the truck rolls. I had a new engine customer yesterday tell me he's calling it CBD, cash before delivery. Their credit card is done. Everything is paid for before your truck even leaves the yard. That's a really nice model. And it helps with the discounts because it bolsters your margin. Excuse me, this is my second webinar in 2 days. It bolsters your margin by making really significant cost cutting. John will talk about that in a second. My last little piece here, and this is, again, the consultant and me, take it for what it's worth. These aggregation sites that are springing up and becoming more and more prominent, you know who they are. They have some kind of cheap in oil or propane in their name, and they're essentially a reverse auction. The margins that are being required to participate in these sites now are ridiculous. At 18-25 cents a gallon, talk about a margin killer. I don't know how anybody can make money at 18 cents or 20 cents or 23 cents. Please don't race to the bottom with these folks. I'm shocked at I guess maybe this is the moral of the story, that the fact that dealers participate at these super low margins while losing control of the customer relationship, while losing control of your rules, essentially letting someone else serve the customer and turning you into a trucking company. The fact that dealers are doing that is probably more reflective of how much they want gallons. And our message is, with e-commerce, you can do all of that yourself. The reason that John and Adrian built this company as a dealer-centric e-commerce solution was we didn't want, and they didn't want you to lose control of that relationship, lose control of the equity of that customer. We wanted you to do that and make the money and not somebody else. So with that, I hope that's a decent context, and I'm going to turn it over to John, who's the CEO of Energy Engine, and to date has run the largest online fuel company ever to exist with 80,000 plus customers, and knows a thing or two about online fuel sales, and he's going to talk through the real hard data on what we're seeing in our customer base. So John, hopefully that was good, and change presenters, and off to you.
Mark, that was better than good. That was every time I listen to you talk about the market, how it's changed, this particular consumer, and so forth. There are always a few other nuggets that I gain as this market continues to change quickly. So thanks for that setup. That's great. And good morning, everyone. And Adrian and Mark, if you'll confirm that you're now seeing the slide on my deck, I'd appreciate that.
You look good.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. And before I jump in here, and you're going to hear a lot of consistency between what Mark said and I said, except maybe I'm going to have some more numbers around it. But before I do that, I want to remind you that if you have questions, please take some time while we're going through the presentation to type them into the chat field on your GoToMeeting panel. Like Adrian mentioned at the beginning, as Mark was talking, I saw some questions come in, and we'd love to have yours as well. So if something's not clear, you just want to go a little bit deeper, or there's something confusing, please just type it in. All the questions are good, and we'll get to them in just a few minutes after I wrap up this session. I wanted to start with this slide, that's up there, because my job today is to make e-commerce come alive for you. What does e-commerce look like in an energy engine client's business on a day-to-day basis? And that's really where all these numbers come from. We've built out a sizable network since we've had the energy engine, and ever since the beginning, we've used the aggregated data from that network, which is really the largest body and virtually the only body of data that exists within downstream fuels, to really measure how this market is changing, how dealers are performing, what their capability is to grow their business, to acquire new customers, and so forth. But I ran across this particular comment in my reading not all that long ago, and I thought it was particularly appropriate to this presentation. It says, learning and innovation go hand in hand, which sounds like a quote that is coming from a techie and maybe in Northern California that's involved in technology and so forth. But then it goes on to say, the arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. And if you think about it, that's really what Mark talked about in the first 20 minutes here today, is our industry is evolving, okay? It is changing. All of you on this phone are operating successful businesses. Some of you have had family members doing it for generations, or people before you. And the businesses are successful. But the market is changing, and the innovation that was done by dad, by granddad, is not the innovation that's needed today. And certainly we've seen these companies, if we look back over the history of some of the companies that are on the call today, that's very visible. You can see that innovation progressed through the business and the changes that were made as the market and customers evolved. And that's all we're saying today. This is not a watershed of change. It's just a continuing evolvement that's involved in virtually any industry. The unusual thing about this quote, at least that I found unusual, is it wasn't from somebody in Silicon Valley. It's actually from a gentleman who was an English author back in the 19th century, and also a Quaker minister. And, I don't know about you, but while I respect the heritage of the Quakers, I don't particularly think of them as innovators. But William Pollard here obviously understood that you needed to continue to be successful by continuing to learn and to innovate. And hopefully that's some of what we're able to share with you today. So with that, let's get into some of the real success that our clients have. Mark mentioned, that the consumers aren't satisfied with shopping carts on internet sites or, portals. While they're extremely valuable for functionality for your full service customers, they really don't do a very good job. They weren't designed for the will call or the COD or the self-service customer, as we're talking about them today. And often we have other clients that actually come from that background, and they may come to us initially and say, "Hey, I already have online customers," and those online customers will ask them, "How many?" "Well, I've got 100 or 150 is a relatively common response, and I've been doing this for 4 years or 5 years or whatever the number is." And I think through this particular part of the presentation, you'll understand why those companies, thought that was good, but have come to a realization since they're talking to us that maybe there's more out there. And through this presentation, you can see just how much more is out there. So even if you have that online capability, you may want to pay particular attention, to some of these numbers, some of the growth and so forth, and go back and take a look at yours because there really is a large market out there that is pretty exciting. Here's how we're going to look at those measures of success today. 3 different things: customers, gallons, and profit. They're fairly standard metrics within the industry, but I'm going to share with you not only the averages of our network, but also some best practice numbers, and you can see how those things change as well. So let's jump right in. Let's go to customers. And we're going to look at customers a couple of different ways. One of the ways we're going to look at customers is how many are added, how many new customers are added to the e-commerce sites, to their e-commerce business each year. The basis of information in our metrics that I'm drawing from are around last heating season. So it would be October 1st of 2018 to March 31st of 2019. Okay, last heating season as defined by the government. Our average client during that period of time added 326 new customers to their business. If we then look, and that's a pretty good number. Certainly, if you think back to my comment in terms of the shopping carts or using a portal where we customarily see a client say to us, "Hey, we have 100, we have 150," stretch it and say it's double than that. We have 300 of them that they acquired over the last several years that are using their service pretty regularly. Our clients on average are acquiring more than that each year. So that's kind of the delta that you can expect. But if we look at then best practices, that BP is just my shorthand for best practices because I can't remember all these numbers off the top of my head. There are just too many of them. Our best practice group from this last heating season acquired 941 customers, just about triple what the average client did. And then if we annualize that over a 12-month period, because we know we can look at it that way within our data, that number jumps to better than 1,000 customers added during the course of the year. And we now have clients, normally these are clients that have been on the energy engine for a number of years, maybe 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, that have really kind of figured things out, and they have a routine that they go through, they have a methodology, they have their marketing down in terms of what works. And think about acquiring and adding 1,000 new customers a year to your business at the acquisition cost that Mark talked about. So customers are good, but again, as when Mark asked you to close your eyes and picture the will call COD customer of old, we talked about them not particularly being loyal customers. Well, but that is not the case. Just as Mark said, let me put some numbers to it. The loyalty rates for our entire network, again for this past heating season, were 63%. Okay, just about what that was a year ago. It has been going up generally over the last several years since we started tracking loyalty. Our best practice group is at 72%. Propane, I actually broke out our pure propane or propane only clients because loyalty there, interestingly, is a little bit stronger. Our average propane company, this is the average, not the best practice, is actually at 73%. So propane has a tendency, at least within our database, to be even more loyal for this self-service customer. So strong numbers. Now, what's a loyalty rate? What's a good loyalty rate? What's a loyalty rate of your full service customers? We often hear, it's got to be, our full service customers, God, we keep them until they die. We've had them for 30 years, that sort of thing, or it must be 90%. It's probably not 90% because one of the things we know is that 14% of U.S. households move every year. So, by definition, if that's it, it's going to be tougher for you to get an 86% loyalty rate. And based upon Mark's work, within the industry, he talks about the net gain is a good deal. If you can, in the full service business today, if you can acquire as many new full service customers as you lose during the course of the year, you're doing better than many in the industry. So these loyalty rates are looking good and they're getting stronger. But the other measure of loyalty is not just somebody that comes back and buys from you again, but how much of their usage, how much of the propane or the oil that they're consuming Are they in fact buying from you, or are they shopping around and they're just buying one delivery from you? Fact of the matter is that they are not just buying one delivery. The average in the network is that, and this is based upon EIA, average consumption across the entire region, our clients are capturing 76% of the total volume that is being purchased, that the consumers are using. The best practice group, it's 92% of the volume that they are consuming. The interesting thing that I see in the data, and just looking at trends, is this loyalty from that customer begins very early on. And it's what Mark has talked about in terms of consumers having a need to have it simple. They want to do it the way that they want to. And if you're serving them on a full service e-commerce platform, you're making it simple for them. You're communicating back to them. So it's a two-way street. They're giving you information. You're sending information back to them. You're responding to their behaviors, as Mark mentioned on the slide about the differences in e-commerce. All of that is contributing to that customer from day one, their first purchase, being a loyal customer. We're seeing very similar gallons being delivered for our newest clients as we are for our oldest clients. So it's something, certainly loyalty needs to be earned. You need to do your job well. But certainly the e-commerce experience that our clients are giving their customers it's a very strong story, and it appears to start very early in the process. Let's talk about gallons. Talk about customers. Customers lead to gallons, certainly. But one of the questions that we get is particularly from the new clients is, hey, what can I expect? I'm kind of looking at my business plan here, and I know I have to make an investment in this business because it's a new part of my business, so I have to tell people that I have it. So what can I expect in terms of gallons to be able to justify this investment? And you can see that graph on the left-hand side goes up pretty sharply. And it's broken down into our clients at different stages of seniority. So the first column there, where that number is less than 1 year, represents clients that came onto the energy engine sometime during this last heating season. So at most, that's 6 months worth of data. At the least, it's 1 month worth of data. And the average last year for those brand new clients coming in was they did 36,840 gallons during the course of last heating season. Then you move to the next column. These are our clients that have been on the energy engine between 1 year and 3 years, and they're doing 186,000, almost 187,000 gallons. So the business is ramping up for them. Then you get better than those that have been on the engine for greater than 3 years, and it jumps way up, better than triples to 662,000 gallons. So like any new business that you're going into, you're starting from customer number one and building the business, but you can see that it builds pretty darn quickly. Cost justification is very, very easy to do with complete e-commerce. The final column on the right is our best practice group, which represents the top 10% of our clients. And I can tell you that these are not large companies. These are typical companies within the industry. We had a question yesterday about companies and these I would say Adrian would know better than I do, but our average client probably serves 2 or 3 counties out of one dispatch point. So it's pretty reflective of the industry. But it jumps way up to 1.4, 1.5 million gallons. And obviously within that best practices group, we have some that are considerably larger than that. So the gallons grow quickly, the gallons grow as quick as you really want them to based upon the level of commitment and drive and so forth that you put into the business. The other thing is, do you get to those gallons and they just plateau and you're there forever, or they start to decline? Actually, what we see is those gallons continue to grow. Looking at our same store clients, so this number is not influenced by new clients coming in. This is not our overall network volume. These are the averages for clients that have been in the business. Say, over the last 5 years, they've generally seen a growth rate of about 25% per year. So the growth continues, and we really don't see that stopping. And that makes sense too, because you look at e-commerce in the retail environment, the Amazons, the Targets, the list of companies that Mark rattled off during his presentation. All of them and the industry and the experts are saying, hey, this trend, moving more people online to do more of their commerce, is going to continue. We have no reason to believe that that's any different for us. We see that growth continuing as well. All right, also real world results. Let's talk about the disruption within will call. And Mark touched on this a number of different places, but if you compare this to phone-based COD will call, and I see there are also some folks on the call today that are primarily COD companies, or even if you're a will call company, even if you're full service and primarily a full service company, many of you also have your discount companies or your will call COD companies. We see that more and more. But that phone-based, if you just think about that, phone-based COD will call operations are very complex. They're very disruptive, and all of that turns into expense. So let's just go ahead and just talk about some of these things, and then this may to use Mark's technique. This may be a good place for you to close your eyes again and just think about the will call disruption. Think about the phones blowing up in your call center as one dealer, as I recall, he's from Central Michigan, walked up to me at a trade show this year and said, I've been good at growing my business. I've been able to increase the customers, but now my call center is blowing up. Can e-commerce help me? It absolutely can, but that disruption in your call center, and then you get the caller on the other end of the phone that says, okay, I'll be home to pay you. Or the caller says, no, I won't be home, but I'm going to put the check under the mat. Or the caller says, I'll be home. I'm going to give the driver cash. Oh my God, cash. Hopefully you're not taking cash for a variety of different reasons. But if you are taking cash, then the next question they ask, do you give a discount for cash? Oh my gosh. So anyway, and then so driver comes back and he's got these checks, he's got this cash at the end of the day, and you deposit those checks and you get one of them here or there that bounces. Then you have to chase that money. Hopefully you can recover it and get a good check. In other cases, you have to write it off as bad debt. Or you get that other caller that calls in and they try and be a little bit sneaky. They say, hey, I use a lot of oil. I've got a 550 gallon tank, and I need 400 gallons. What's the best price you can give me? And, you discount a little bit because it's going to be a larger delivery. And, then meanwhile, you go out there and they may wind up taking less than that. So let's go ahead, if I can. Don't know why it won't advance there, but let's do it this way. There we go. So let's now think about how that world of disruption and complexity would change with e-commerce, and this is really how it happens. If you are set up properly, you can take what that phone call disruption in your call center and essentially eliminate those phone calls for all of those customers. But in order to do that, you need a true e-commerce platform. You need an Amazon type of an experience, so that customer, sure, they can come in, they can check your price, they can say, okay, that's a good deal. They can register online, they can place their order online, they can arrange for their payment online. All of that's automated for them. It's automated for you. But if you don't tell that customer when they're going to get that delivery, the next thing that happens is they pick up the telephone and they call you and say, I just placed my order online. When am I going to get my delivery? All right, well, you kind of blew that customer experience. So one of the key things about an e-commerce platform is the communications needs to go both directions. They place that order. You need to set the expectations when they're placing that order, how long it's going to take for delivery. Then you confirm that once your dispatcher schedules that delivery, and an email goes back to the customer and says, hey, you're going to automatically, nobody's sitting in your office typing out this email. The system does it, but that email goes back to the customer and your phone doesn't ring. The driver, at the same time, makes deliveries a lot like they do automatics. Matter of fact, very similar. The only difference is if that customer would place an order for less than a fill. They said, okay, I want to buy 200 gallons. Driver needs to set the meter stop. No big deal. Other than that, they're delivering like automatics. Customer doesn't need to be there. Your driver is, in fact, think about your driver. He's no longer a cashier. He's no longer making change. He's no longer searching around the house trying to find where the heck the customer put that check that they said that they were going to leave for you. All they're doing is making their deliveries. They're hooking up, making the delivery safely, printing the ticket, leaving the customer's copy of the ticket at the house, and they're on their way to the next stop. So it becomes as efficient as your automatic deliveries. Your payments, of course, are all credit card or a method of e-payment. As Mark says, CBD. I love the CBD, Mark. Cash before delivery. Today, that it certainly has now in my mind that has CBD has a dual meaning, but I like cash before delivery. But it's true. Typically our clients are making delivery the second day, and those credit card payments are typically in your bank before you leave the yard with that delivery. Discount for cash. Why that ever started seemed to make sense at the time. It's not factual. It doesn't happen. Cash costs more money to handle, let alone the liability that it presents to you and your driver, the additional time that it takes, the handling in the office, everything associated with that. Virtually none of our clients take cash. There is one pocket in the country that's a market that has been built on cash over the years, and some of that still goes on, but even those guys are moving away from it. So my advice would be, please don't take cash, or if you convert to e-commerce, it's the perfect time to stop taking cash. And we can give you some techniques how to do that. You also will not experience any bad debt, zero, nothing, nada. So that's beautiful. If your financial guy is taking a look at this business, he might even get excited about the positive float, meaning you have the customer's money before you're delivering the oil to them, or before you have to pay for that oil. If you're working on 10-day terms and you're getting that money in your bank in 2 days, you've got an 8-day positive flow. Remember that customer that tried to get a better price for you by saying he needed 400 gallons and maybe only delivered 150 into that tank? Well, in the e-commerce world, tiered pricing is something you absolutely should be doing. It's easy to do. The customer sees that from when they're placing the order. So they know that if they place that order for 400 gallons, they're not going to get that 400 gallon price unless they take 400 gallons. If you can only get 150 gallons into that tank, they're then automatically going to be adjusted to the 150 gallon price. Again, something nobody in your office is doing. Nobody's having to explain to the customer. Everything's explained on the website. Everything's automatically adjusted. Everything is automatically settled and confirmed back to the customer. What they ordered, what was delivered, how the price was adjusted based upon that delivery quantity. Simple. How does that translate into margins? The last part of our presentation. Well, e-commerce significantly reduces your order fulfillment costs. And I'm not going to go down all of these items to the right. We've really talked about all of those. We've talked about customer care. We've talked about the driver being much more efficient and not having to do the redeliveries when the customer isn't home to pay, like they said. We talked about the payment processing, credit cards and e-payments, and so forth. And all of this, and this is documented, and this is something we could do for your individual business. If you're a business that happens to have, for example, higher than average delivery costs, that's okay, because your margin improvement will actually be greater than the 10 to 12 cents. You just think about that. I mean, you think about that difference compared to what that does for you compared to your competitors. I mean, that's almost like being able to buy your propane or buy your heating oil 10 or 12 cents a gallon less than all of your competitors are buying it. That's a huge economic advantage for you. So with that, wrapping up, in terms of business development, which Adrian said at the beginning has been my entire career, we're really checking all of the boxes in terms of what this industry, and I talk about the industry as far as downstream fuels. Mark talked about reductions in heating oil demand over the years. Certainly the same thing is happening in terms of propane at a little bit different rate, but certainly in terms of propane being used for heating, it is in fact declining gallons as well. So e-commerce, though, gives you a strong advantage to add new customers that are loyal to your business, which contribute new gallons to your business that continue to grow year over year. At the same time, it simplifies your operations and increases your margin 10 to 12 cents a gallon. So it's a very compelling value proposition, certainly for you as dealers, that your customers will reward you with. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation back to Adrian. But if you do have any questions, and I see some of them have popped in also while I've been talking, but please get yours in. And Adrian, it's back to you.
Okay, great. John, the first question is for you. With the gallon growth for e-commerce, what is the attrition rate for the same company full service?
0. It's a great question, and it's a question that we get often. And I flippantly kind of say 0. We had to go back when Adrian and I first got involved with e-commerce was well before the energy engine itself. It was I came into this part of the energy industry in 2000 and launched the first e-commerce company, which Mark had mentioned, grew to be very sizable, serving customers over 10 states. And that was a big fear that we had ourselves at that point, because we had a full service company. Actually, we had a strong will call COD business by phone also. And then I come along, and Adrian and others, and we launched this e-commerce. Actually, e-commerce is probably a stretch at that point. It was online fuel sales. Wasn't nearly as sophisticated as the e-commerce technology that we have today built into the energy engine. So the people that were running our full service business, our traditional business, they said the same thing. You're going to kill our business. Our full service customers are going to see that they can buy oil at a cheaper price, and they're going to go online. We're going to lose all of our full service customers. So we monitored that very, very specifically. And it didn't happen. Matter of fact, in the first year, I could count on 2 hands the number of full service customers that had gone over to the online business. So it was really, and at that particular point, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 on an annual basis that we were serving. We had 12,000 full service customers. It was 15,000 COD customers. So of those 12,000 full service customers, we lost less than 10. And what we didn't know is how many of those would have left us anyway. Because they wanted to buy their oil cheaper, whatever their particular circumstances were, and they moved over to online. Every time we have repeated that type of case study with other companies, the results are the same. Matter of fact, Mark mentioned a lot of things in a short 20 minutes that he has, but he mentioned that we regularly see when we have clients who use their e-commerce capability to cross-sell, that they actually see an increase in their full service business. One of the things I've noticed the last couple of weeks, because I am in most of our clients' databases. So I see what they're doing in terms of their marketing, because I look like a prospect to them, or in some cases a customer to them. So I'm getting their particular marketing efforts, and I've been receiving offers for budget plans or sign up for a price protection plan, which is typical this time of the year. So they're using their online customer base, whose needs change periodically, and saying, hey, if you want the convenience of a budget plan, now's the time to sign up. So that kind of cross-selling actually can contribute to growth for your full-service business as well. So hopefully that answers the question. But do not worry about customer attrition. Mark also said, hey, if they wanted a cheaper price, they can go to 20 other customers in your market today, and they can get a cheaper price than you're probably selling them full service anyway. So they know those other alternatives are out there. A full service customer buys full service because they want full service.
Okay. Another question is that there's difficulty with propane e-commerce, the ownership of the tank, and the gas check requirements. John, do you want to take it?
Mark, you want to answer that one? You answer that one particularly well.
Sure, I'll run at that. So, yeah, like I said earlier in the presentation, we have customers in both markets, and we actually have a propane module. So we have a heating oil module that handles all of the particulars of heating oil. We also have a propane module specific to propane orders, and it covers all the safety concerns, customer ownership of the tank, indemnity, gas check. And yes, for a customer because in the propane business, a lot of our customers will move their will call business online. So they're an established customer with a company-owned tank, and that's easy. For others who are transient, it will trigger human intervention. It has to at a point when the tank is not yours, or there has not been a gas check done by your company. John does a really good job of having the documents that customers sign, ownership certificates, that we're constantly having those vetted by the big insurance carriers in the industry to stay in pace with changes to indemnity regulations. But the propane module is very different than the heating oil module, very intuitive. Customers like it, dealers like it, and it covers those nuances.
Okay. The next question is, we take COD orders and payments on our website. It works fine. Why is the engine better?
I'll take that one, Adrian. I think really the reason why the engine, I won't say the engine is better. I would say that the experience that the customer receives is better. And online works. And quite honestly, when we started doing this in the year 2000, that's kind of the functionality that we had. It was one way. A customer could come onto the website, they could see what the price was, they could place their order, and they could arrange their payments online. And they were happy at that particular point. As technology has marched on, and all of us know technology changes very quickly. The iPhone is only 10 years, maybe it's 11 years old. Mark can correct me on that. But, it's hard for us to think back to when we did not have a smartphone. How the technology has changed so quickly, and a new model comes out every couple of years because of advances in the technology and the capability of that particular electronic device. Doing business online is no different. Adrian, while the energy engine, and I proudly say, and it's thanks to Adrian and her team, there is nothing in the industry that comes anywhere close to the capabilities of the energy engine as a tool for our clients, and provides our clients with the flexibility to run the business the way that they want to. But the proof is really in the numbers, and the customers like the experience. Two-way communications back to that customer we didn't have when we first started back in 2000. It took us a couple of years to start getting some of that, And Adrian's team today continues to add enhancements to the energy engine to better serve that customer on an ongoing basis throughout the year. So, the energy engine that was developed and initially launched, now coming up on 10 years ago, is much advanced today compared to what we had back then. The reason why we do that and make that investment is it continues to provide greater results for our clients. So, but it's really the customer experience that customer is looking for, and they're going to reward you. You'll be rewarded with new customers, and more new gallons, and obviously the disruption that I went through discussion, goes away, which also adds margin to your business.
John, if I could add something, you talk about how we enhance the engine on a regular basis, and we do. Every day we enhance the engine. And as much as I'd like to say, hey, we do it because we want to do it, we do it because we need to do it. The consumer today is looking for certain things. So we have to stay, or we try to stay, a step ahead of the consumer. So, okay, looks like it's the last question. And Mark, might be you. I get that COD customers are different, but they all want 100 gallons. How can we make money?
Yeah, I think the quick answer to that is that e-commerce allows for dimension one is tiered pricing. So your best rate for the highest volume. So at 100 gallons, they're going to pay a much higher margin than the customer who's buying 200. It's not one price for all. So tiered pricing matrix is the first defense against losing margin against 100 on a delivery. The second is, customers try to get a little tricky, right? So they go online and they order 200 at the cheapest price, and they know they're only going to get 100. The engine is capable of catching that, correcting not only the gallons, but also moving them to a higher price and then reconciling the credit card. So there's no way to sneak through to get a 100-gallon drop at a low price. So it's tiered pricing, and it's the ability of the system to recognize how to move people up in margin as the quantity goes down.
Okay, great. Well, that was the last question. So I'd like to, at this time, say to John and, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm seeing one that's in my chat. It looks like it may have been to me. It also is on, propane e-commerce, being more challenging based upon, some of the other requirements for tank and leak checks and safety and that sort of thing. And Mark essentially answered the question before, but this particular questioner, if there is more of a question, please reach out to us. I mean, our contact information is on the screen here. And if you're in the propane business and you want to see it, I know, Mark answered the question quite well, but, I'd encourage you to actually see how it will work in your business. It might be worthwhile for you to, maybe put your key people together and, contact one of us or contact Adrian directly to just set up an online demo to actually see how those particular features within the propane module actually work, so you can visualize it within your business. Because propane is different than heating oil, without a doubt, but it really isn't difficulty. The module is designed to handle all of that plus. Matter of fact, they're even if you're in the heating oil business and you're doing first delivery tank inspections, that capability, if you need it, and certainly in the states where it's regulated and mandated that way, that exists within the heating oil module as well. So we've sat in your chairs, we've lived your life, so we know, what you go through, and we built those sort of things into the energy engine. So reach out to us, be glad to show it to you, no obligation at all. Sorry, Adrian.
That's okay. Okay, so thank you, John. Thank you, Mark. You guys did a great job, always informative. And I'd like to also thank our attendees for taking the time this morning to come and sit through the webinar. I will be sending out an email, hopefully within the next 24 hours. So if anyone has any questions, you can certainly respond to that. But as John said, if you have any other questions, the contact information is on the screen, and we'll be more than happy to assist. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thanks.
Let's see. There we go.